In his book, The No Guilt for Witnessing, for Sharing the Gospel, George Sweeting tells of a man by the name of John Currier who was found guilty of murder in 1949 and sentenced to life in prison. Later, he was transferred and paroled to work on a farm in Nashville, Tennessee. In 1968, Currier's sentence was terminated, and a letter bearing this good news was sent to him. But John never saw the letter, nor did anyone tell him about it. And so life on the farm, though it was hard and without promise, continued. John kept doing what he was told to do long after the farmer for whom he worked had passed away. 10 years went by before a state trooper had learned of John's plight. So he found John and told him the good news about his sentence being terminated and that he was a free man. What would it matter to you if someone sent you an important, life-altering message, the most important in your life, if year after year you never received the message? Of course, that's a rhetorical question. The answer is obvious. It wouldn't mean a thing to you because you wouldn't know about it and because you'd never gotten the message. All too often, there are people in this world that are in that very same situation as John was. There's been a letter sent to them that they never received. They never received the life-altering message that is of greatest importance. It is literally a matter of life and death. The message is the good news of Jesus Christ. Those of us who have experienced that freedom in Christ are responsible to proclaim it and to share it with others who are still enslaved in sin. Are the people receiving that message? Are we sending that message? There was a Christian barber in town. He heard a rousing sermon on evangelism, and he really wanted to share the good news. He was so moved by it, he immediately signed up to the special soul-winning class in church. He spent weeks in the class memorizing scripture, taking notes, and figuring out exactly how he was going to share the gospel. He was ready to evangelize. And so the class was finished. It was time to put it into practice. And so he prayed to God to send someone into the barber shop to hear his well-rehearsed sharing of the plan of salvation. And almost immediately, a burly biker covered in tattoos and wearing leather and chains comes in, and he says, "I lost a bet, and you have to shave my beard off." And as he prepared the man for shaving, put the cream on and everything, he was working up the courage to share with him. What would he say? How would the man respond? Would he be happy? Would he be angry? And he's thinking all of these things. And as he's doing that, he's sharpening his straight-edge razor on his straw. He gets it sharpened, and he gets up the courage, and he walks towards the man with this razor, and he says, "Are you prepared to die?" There are some more effective ways and less effective ways to share the gospel. I wouldn't recommend that you ask somebody if they're ready to die with a weapon in your hand. It just may not be the best thing to do. But each of us have to be ourselves when we are sharing the message of Jesus with others. People can read put on faces. People can notice rehearsed gurgitations and things like that. What we need to do is relax, be ourselves, and share Jesus with people. That's all it takes. And so I want us to look at Acts chapter 3, verse 1 and following there today. And that's going to be our text. Peter and John were going about their daily life. They were living life as you and I know that when you're living life, that things just happen. So Peter and John were disciples of Jesus Christ who had walked with Jesus in his ministry and were now putting all they had learned into practice in their life, sharing Jesus with the lost. And so that's what Jesus did. And so in Matthew 28 and 18, Jesus had given them instructions. He said, and his last instructions to the apostles before his ascension, as you go, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to do all things as I've commanded you. That's what Peter's and John's focus was. And you'll see that in this text, that they were focused on that. They understood the importance of sharing the good news that they had, that they benefited from. They wanted others to have that same benefit, and they understood how important it was to get that to these people. A lot of times in church today, people are looking for the home run rather than taking it one base at a time. You know, in baseball, the home run has all the hype and pomp because it can change the game with one swing of the bat. But you don't hear a lot of the pomp when they're doing it one base at a time, even if they win the game. The special events, the one-time hits, are things in the church that people kind of just rely on to get the message out to people. And so when we have a special event, we invite people, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm all for that. But you know, back in the 60s, they used to have these special weekend events, and people counted on them for the building of the church. And so they would get in a dynamic speaker, not one like me, they'd get a dynamic speaker, and they would bring him in, and man, he would pump people up, and he'd get people excited, and people would turn to Christ, and there'd be 30, sometimes 50 added to the body. Now, one weekend. And that speaker left, and the next week when they came back, and the preacher got up and delivered his sermon, the following week, where were they all? They were gone. And it deflated almost as fast as it came up on that weekend. And so Peter and John weren't the special occasion people. They weren't relying on that one big thing. Their focus, their mission was to live it day in and day out and share it day in and day out. They understood that. And so they weren't just Sunday worshipers. They were Christians Sunday through Sunday, all week long. And they understood that they needed to share Jesus with people every day. You say, well, but I'm at work all the time. Yeah, that's true. But there's people at work, right? There's people everywhere you go. Well, on this particular day, they just happened to be heading to the temple to pray. Now, that was a very common scene in their day. Any day of the week, you would have witnessed people walking to the temple to pray or to offer a sacrifice. That was just the custom of the day. It was kind of like people expect to see you driving to assembly on Sunday morning, because that's part of what we do. And so it was something that they just did in their life. And so they're heading to the temple. And this situation presents itself in the form of a lame man. He is carried on a cot by people and set at the gate of the temple so he can beg for his meager living, because he couldn't get around on his own. For Peter and John, this was nothing new. There were people like this all the time in that day and age. And there were cripples and begging for things on street corners and everywhere else. They all had their place where they went. But they were just on their way to pray at the temple. And as they did, and had done in many days. But today there's this lame man on a cot. Now here's where most people say, okay, David, but those were apostles. They had the power to heal that guy. Well, I don't want us to look so much at the healing as to what was behind the healing. That's what I want us to look at. Because whether you're doing a miracle or sharing the miracle with someone, it's no different. It's still the miracle that Jesus saves And people need to hear that. So let's take a look at the lame man for a few minutes. You know, back in those days, there were no such thing as wheelchairs and wheelchair ramps to get around and all of these kinds of things. It was a very different challenge for someone who was lame. They were dependent on the goodwill and the charity of service of family members and other people. And this man really had no life other than the fact that he was breathing, he needed to eat, and he could speak. But as far as getting around and doing things, he had to have someone carry him around. He had to have people carry him around. And so he had people carry him to a place where he thought he had the best chance to get some food and some money to sustain himself. You see, he would depend then on others, if he got money, to get the food and maybe even prepare the food for him. He had to just trust in all the help that he could get. And he would have been a great burden on the family. And usually in those days, it was the family that took care of them. But it would have taken a significant amount of the family's time and energy just to look after him. Think about this for a minute. Just let your minds wander for a second here. And think about all of the things that you do in life, and he couldn't do them. You know, we take so for granted, we just walk into the shower in the morning or in the evening or whenever. We don't think nothing of it. He couldn't do that. And the things that we do just take for granted, he couldn't do. He was laid up. And I asked myself as I read this passage, where would my faith be in that situation? You see, what was the focus of this lame man? He was a Jew. He was one of God's people, and I imagine he believed in God. He knew where to go to get the things that he wanted. He knew that at the temple gate, the people that were serious about their faith in God would be more compassionate. And so he knew where to go to get some help. But his focus was all his current need. That's all he could focus on. His instinct for survival was the foremost focus for him. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like that where you were so desperate, you had nothing, and you didn't know where you were going to get your next meal from. I don't know if you've ever been there. If you lived in Canada, the chances of that happening are very minimal. But I know people who have been in that situation, and they say it gets pretty desperate. You get pretty desperate feeling. It's not a good thing. It's not an easy thing. And you get very concerned about where you're going to get that next bite of food from. This man begged all his life just to survive and have a meager existence. And so most people would say, well, what else would his priority be? Nothing is mentioned here about his faith in God. Nothing is mentioned about his life as a man of God. All we see is that he was a beggar, that he was lame, and his survival was dependent on what he could get from other people. I've had people say to me, what else is there to focus on in life? We need to survive, so what else do we focus on? Well, let me see. Jesus said in Matthew 6:25, he said, don't be anxious about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about the body, what you'll put on it. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? And then he uses the birds of the air and the lilies of the field to illustrate how God takes care of them, and we are of so much more value to God than those things. Why wouldn't God take care of us? And then he says, by the way, after people read that passage, they say, I'm still worried. I'm still concerned. And we do that sometimes as human beings. But Jesus says, what good is it to you if you worry? You can't add a hair to your head. Trust me, I would do it. You can't do that. What good is it for you to worry? You can't add an hour to your life. When God says you're going home, it doesn't matter what someone else says. You're going home. And so worrying isn't going to change any of that except make you sick. So why worry? The lame man somehow didn't seem to have this awareness of life. Maybe, I don't know. He didn't seem to be leaning on God so much. He was leaning on other people to support him, and I get that. People today are still in that situation. With the abundance we have in this country, the life that we have in this country, as soon as something troublesome hits or something hits that I don't like because I like my life a certain way with certain comforts and all of these things, we're just as lost as that lame man. And so that's the lame man. But what was the reaction of John and Peter, the Christians, to whom he asked for something? The first thing that we notice with Peter and John is that they gave this man their attention and their time. They could have just ignored him and went into the temple, because after all, praying is a priority. And we've got this time schedule that we're on, and praying fits into the time schedule here. So we're going in there now. We don't have time to bother with this guy. They could have thrown some change at him, or a donut if they had a donut in their pocket or something. They could have sneered at him because they didn't understand his plight in life. I mean, they were busy apostles, right? But they didn't do any of that. Rather, they gave him their attention and their time. They stopped, just like Jesus did. We learned in class this morning, right? Right in the middle of something else happened, and he stopped to reach out to somebody. And that's what they did. They stopped because they had this evangelistic focus. I have a question for you. What would you have done in that situation? And you can put yourself into anything in your busy schedule in your life. Think about this. If that happened to you, what would you have done? Would you have thought, oh, opportunity to share Jesus? Or would you have thought, oh, I can't be bothered. I got to get over here. I got to get this done. Then I got to get over there and get that done. I'm just too busy today. I can't do this. I don't have the time. Or would you throw some money at him? You see, as Christians, we must be willing, no matter how busy we are, to give our time and attention to someone that needs Jesus in their life. That's part of being a Christian. That's part of evangelism. And the second thing that we see from Peter and John is that they turned the focus of the lame man to the area of life that he truly needed. They turned the focus from money and food to Jesus. They didn't have silver and gold to give him, but they had something to give him. So often we get caught up in the focus of the moment rather than what is best overall for that soul. They said, we have something we'll give you. And what we have is Jesus Christ. Rise up and walk. He is the healer that you need. Not so much the physical healing as the spiritual healing. You and I, as disciples of Jesus Christ, have the greatest gift that anyone can receive on this celestial ball called earth. We have the good news of Jesus Christ. The healing of a world sick soul can be restored back into a relationship with God. When someone is speaking to you or asking you for something, does it cross your mind that you need to give them what they truly need? The best gift you have for them? Or do you just want to give them some money and get them out of your hair? Or give them whatever they want and get them out of your hair? John and Peter said, let me draw your attention to Jesus Christ. He's what you need. And then you see their end game here at the end. They understood, having been with Jesus, and that serving Jesus, honoring him over everything else, and making him the priority over everything else, was of utmost importance. If you read on in the next few verses, you will see that Peter stands up and corrects the people. The people say, "Oh, Peter and John, you guys are awesome. You got such great power. How did you heal that guy? That's so wonderful." And they're about to make them the big people, the important people. They want to honor them. And so Peter stands up and he preaches the gospel, and he puts the glory where the glory ought to be. He says, this is about Jesus of Nazareth and not about Peter and John. And that's why when we were in Texas a month ago, we saw a shirt, and I said, I got to have that shirt. Because on the front of that shirt, it says, "It's not about me." And people have stopped me when I'm wearing that shirt, and they go, "What does that mean?" "Sure, it's about you." I said, "No, it's not about me." I said, "See?" And I turn around, and it says, "It's about Jesus," and it gives a bunch of scriptures that it's about Jesus. And I like wearing that shirt because a lot of people frown at me, but some people, it actually gets them interested and excited. So it's kind of fun. But that's the truth. And that's what John and Peter said. It's not about us. We're merely servants and blessed to be servants, but it's about Jesus Christ. See, they put the glory where it's supposed to be. So, what can we learn from this passage about being evangelistic? Just as you're going along in your daily life, as people cross your path, as people come into your presence, I don't know, maybe Jesus is putting them there for you to share him with them. But we ought to take the time and the opportunity. We don't always know for sure if God's put them there, but we can sure open our mouths and share Jesus with them. That's what Peter and John did. As they were going, they shared the gospel. And who knows? You share the gospel with somebody, and they might be the ones that are jumping up and down like the lame man with their hands raised, praising God for his grace and his mercy. But you got to get the message to them or they don't know. And as we go about our daily living, we need to be having our eyes open to these opportunities, to God opening doors for us to share Jesus with people. Whenever we're out in the world, we need to look at people as needing Jesus, as needing salvation, not as great people or poor people or cute or ugly or however you look at people. It's not about that. It's about that soul needs salvation. That's the only way that we will see and take advantage of the opportunities given to us if we look at it that way. And Jesus expects us to share that good news with people. When those doors open, we want to be prepared not to appease the person with worldly things, but rather to share Jesus with them, just like Peter and John did. How the person responds is up to them. It's not up to us. They just may begin to jump up and down and praise God. You don't know, but you'll never know if you don't share the message with them. And in every situation, we need to make sure that we're not holding ourselves up. That we're making sure that we're holding Jesus up. You are simply a servant. I am simply a servant. And I am blessed to be a servant. But that's what I am. I'm sharing Jesus. And that's where the focus ought to be. That's where the glory and honor belongs. And so I need to let these people know that I'm sharing with that it's about Jesus. It's about the cross, because guess what? I didn't die on the cross for anybody. I didn't live a perfect life to be the perfect sacrifice for anybody's sin. Jesus did that, not me. And so it's all about giving the honor and the glory to Jesus. If you want to learn more about that this morning and you're struggling with that, let us know so we can help you. If you have any struggle in your life that you would like help with, let us know by coming forward while we stand and sing.
Sing to me of heaven, sing that song of peace. From the toils that bind me it will bring release. Burdens will be lifted that are pressing so. Showers of great blessings on my heart will flow. Sing to me of heaven, let me fondly dream of its golden glory, of its pearly gleam. Sing to me when shadows of the evening fall. Sing to me of heaven's sweetest song of all. Sing to me of heaven as I walk alone, dreaming of the comrades that so long have gone. In a fairer region among the angels throng, they are happy as they sing that old sweet song. Sing to me of heaven, let me fondly dream of its golden glory, of its pearly gleam. Sing to me when shadows of the evening fall. Sing to me of heaven's sweetest song of all. Sing to me of heaven tenderly and low, till the shadows on me rise and swiftly go. When my heart is weary, when the day is long, sing to me of heaven, sing that old sweet song. Sing to me of heaven, let me fondly dream of its golden glory, of its pearly gleam. Sing to me when shadows of the evening fall. Sing to me